Welcome to From the Eyes of Wisdom, where we pair an experienced elder from Christa Senior Living with a passionate King's High School student ready to launch into the world. Here's Sherry Lynn.
Ellie, I think I'll start with you. So you are a senior.
Yes, I am.
Senior Kings. And applied to colleges.
Yes, 27. That's about 26 too many.
Why so many?
I don't know. I have a hard time deciding things, and so I'm just like, okay, God, if there's 27 colleges, you tell me the one I should go to.
Okay.
That sounds good.
All right.
Yeah.
So 27 colleges. I thought it was 25. Did you apply to 2 more?
I did.
Right?
Yep. Yep.
Since our last pre-interview. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so right now, what you see your career path being is what?
Either medicine or law, or just finding a way to incorporate both of them would be really cool.
Okay. Medicine and law. All right. And you are on, did I see that you're part of mock trial?
Yeah.
And okay.
Yes,
so.
I've done mock trial for 5 years.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
And I want to do it in college. So.
Okay. All right.
That's
Great.
nice.
Great. Okay. And so, want to have a family, want to get married. Those are things that okay.
For sure.
All right. Great. All right. So speaking of family, getting married, Barbara was married how long?
63 years when my husband passed away.
63 years. And then I know Ellie would love to know how old you were when you got married.
17.
Oh.
I went on and finished school in some college, but I was only 17 when my husband and I lived across the street from each other.
Oh, cute.
We went to the same school together. We grew up together. And so, we just connected. And for 63 years, we stayed connected until he had ended up having a heart attack and passing away.
63 years.
And he was 83 years old when he died. So when we got married, all of his friends teased and they said he robbed the cradle because he was 21 and I was 17.
Oh, okay. So there was a 4-year difference there.
4-year difference.
Okay. How did your parents feel about it?
My parents were very understanding. They were concerned about it. But I met with my pastor at the church. It was a Baptist church at that time. And I talked with him, and my to-be husband met with him too. And anyhow, he kind of related to that we were close, and he didn't say we shouldn't marry or anything like that.
Okay.
But he was very helpful in his advice.
Okay.
So, and we just knew it was the right thing to do.
Okay.
We just knew it. So I went on to business school, and then I went on and worked at a newspaper for quite a few years.
Oh, okay.
In Washington, D.C. at the Times Herald, and then it was sold to the Washington Post.
Wow.
And I didn't care for that very much.
Okay.
I didn't like the man that was the manager. And so I went and took the government test from Washington at the post office department after I passed the government test that you have to work for the government at that time. And then I went to work in the post office department in an office job.
Okay.
And I did that for several years.
Yeah.
And then when my husband got transferred to the Azores, I wanted to join him.
And tell what the Azores.
It's an island, and it was a Lodges Field Air Force Base. And it was in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And it was just an island kind of off by itself. And it had islands, other islands around it. So he went there, and I got all my shots. And at that time, you had to have shots. And I was able to join him.
Okay.
And so it was just...
And this is how long into your marriage?
How long was that? Let's see. I guess it was about 4 or 5 years into my...
Okay, so you're still fairly young.
Yeah, I was still very young.
In your early 20s. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And then we had a place right off base because you had to be an NCO to live on base. So for a while, but we were right, the main gate was right here and our place was right there.
Okay.
And it wasn't fancy at all.
Okay.
Believe me. And when it rained, the walls dripped water.
Oh.
And the humidity was terrible. So you had to put lights in your closet or everything would mold.
Oh.
You had to put what in your closet?
Lights, heat.
Heat in there. So there
or mold would come. It was a rainy area. See, all that area was in the middle of nowhere. So you had a lot of rain and but the largest field was the planes came and went all the time.
Now, this is interesting to me. I'm going to turn to Ellie and let's just take that. We're putting you right around 23, 24 years old.
Yes.
17, 4
yeah,
years.
21, 22.
21, 22.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's just take that part, because that's an adventure in and of You've done more in 4 years than some people have done in 2 decades. So I just it's interesting to me when I was listening to your life, Barbara, and I want to get your take on this, Ellie. I think now there's so much pressure to plan your life. Plan.
Yeah.
And I'm not against planning, so please hear me, everyone. Because I don't want people listening to say, Sherry got on the podcast, told the kids don't plan your lives. No, that's not what I said. I'm just saying that I listened to your life, 17, married, now, working for the, newspaper, then, work for the government. Husband goes to an island. Now you're on an island. The walls are sweating. You got lights in the closet. You're 21, 22 years old. There's something to be said for this kind of feeling, because it sounded as if your faith was important to you.
Oh, yes.
And important to your husband.
Yes, it was.
And so it sounds like there's something to be said about this kind of what I identified in your life. And we'll talk about more of it coming, but this kind of God adventure where every single thing is not planned out. Does that give you, you can be honest with us. It's just the 3 of us and the 2 million people listening to this podcast. Do you, so no pressure.
Okay.
Does that give you anxiety to think about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Okay.
I would say I'm a control freak, so I like control of things.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that that's not how you're supposed to live your life. And so it does give me anxiety at times to know that okay, God is going to take me on the path that He wants to take me on, and it might not be the path that I want to be on, but it's the right path. So
okay. All right. I'm sure you can speak to that, Barbara, because that's what your life sounded like to me. And I'll be honest, I like to say that I'm not a control freak. I think everyone else in my life would probably say differently. But what I will say is I'm not a control freak of others, but I am a control freak of what has to do with me, right? I like the things that have to do with me. I like to have control over, but control is an illusion.
Right.
It really is. You're not controlling anything. You really aren't. And so when I was listening to your life, Barbara, I was like, well, okay, now we're on an island with okay, here we are. And how long were you there?
18 months.
18 months. Okay. And then what?
But then we went back to Maryland, to our home. And then for a while, he went to Denver for some special training.
Okay.
And so we were there for a while. But my husband had a brother that had some mental problems, and his parents were overseas. So the chaplain at the air base kept bringing him back to Andrews Air Force Base so he could look after his brother, which we did. And so we came back to Andrews Air Force Base, and then he was maintenance in the telephone field.
Okay.
And he would go to early warning sites and everything to be sure that their communications were working correctly.
Okay.
So he made a lot of trips there. And then we were able to move on base, which was nice.
Okay.
But we had only been married, let's see, we got married in 1953, and in 1958 our first daughter was born.
Okay. So 5 years.
Are you ready for this? 13 months later, we had twins.
Yeah.
And then 12 years later, we had another son. But they were but when I went to work in Washington after I finished some of the college training, I went to business school.
Yeah.
After I finished that, there was a lady that I worked for the newspaper, and I had to take dictation from 4 or 5 different men, and they weren't very nice.
Yeah.
And so she just took me under her wing, and she just helped me develop, because I was really young.
Yeah.
So she really helped me, and she would pick me up at we had a place where my husband would take me where all the buses would meet and you would go from there. She would take me there and she would pick me up, and she was wonderful.
I see again. I love that. So let's just take it to that point, right? Okay. Now you have twins, 13 months apart from your other child.
Yeah.
You're doing this job. Your husband seems to be very busy and kind of moving around and doing a lot of different things. Can you tell Ellie what you know about God from looking at that time frame there? This is what I know about God during that time. My faith, what he was to you during that time.
Well, the Lord I've always felt the Lord's presence, even when I was very, very young. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a household that had some problems. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been close to the Lord, and I feel his presence every day. Mm-hmm. And I felt it then, and I feel his guidance.
Yeah.
I will, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. I had a perfect example this morning.
Go ahead.
I got up. And I never take a real early shower. I got up, I took a shower, I got dressed, I washed my hair, because I thought this appointment was next week.
Oh.
And I went and I looked at the calendar. It's today. And I thought, thank you, Lord, for getting me up, getting me in the shower.
Yeah.
So it's
little things like that he's on the journey with you.
You feel I feel his presence all.
Ellie. He's with us. Is that not amazing?
Yeah.
I'm sure you do too, Ellie.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So tell me, well, let me ask you this, Barbara. Would you have considered yourself during that time an anxious person or a lot of anxiety?
No.
No, not a lot of
I just
anxiety.
never have had that.
Yeah. Okay. Ellie?
Yeah.
Anxiety? Honestly, like in your, I ask young people this a lot. Mm-hmm. In your natural state, just you, on any given day, would we describe your state as anxious or peaceful?
I would say I'm pretty peaceful.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So not kind of anxious, like, okay, now what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Good.
I think when it's stressful, I think there's a little bit of anxiety, but for the most part, I'm pretty peaceful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you hear that first part of her life, what are your thoughts?
I think it's really cool, like, the trust she has in God.
Yeah.
And just, like, he's going to take care of her and provide for her and just give her rest and peace when she needs it. I think that's something that I can definitely take into my life and definitely, use. Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad that's what you got, because I'm sure Barbara can attest to this. That is not something that I'm not going to ask you your age, so you don't have to tell me. You can if you
88.
Oh my.
You
look amazing.
You just look gorgeous. Oh. You really are. I would have never, would you have guessed 88? I would have never guessed 88. You just wonderful.
Well, thank you.
But that's not something, that's what I love about God and his kingdom. You don't have to be 88 to get that lesson.
Mm-hmm. No.
You know what I mean? God can set this up to give you that lesson now.
Yeah.
That on the road, the woman who was helping you, do you remember her name?
Peggy.
Mm-hmm. God can give you a Peggy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's just, he puts people in our pathway I think he does that. I mean, I believe the Lord does that.
Okay. So a personal question, Ellie, I'm saying you don't have to answer it, but what I will say is I won't put it on a podcast if you tell me not to.
Okay.
Are you dating anyone?
No.
Okay. Not dating anyone. So what should Ellie look for? 63 years of a successful marriage. Got married 17. What would you, if you had to give her a couple things to look for based on the character of your husband, who sounds like a wonderful man?
He was.
Yeah.
My husband was always one of these people that was willing to work hard. Mm-hmm. His family was very, very important to him. Mm-hmm. And when we were dating, we talked about having children. We talked about what we wanted when we got married. Mm-hmm. And I said, he knew that I wanted children and he wanted children. And I think I think you can tell if somebody cares enough to put you first. Mm. My husband always put me first. And also, I know from his friends, if he talked to his friends about me, it was always kind and nice. And
wow.
And I tried to do the same about him.
Yeah.
Because he was, And so he was always, and he was a hard-working man because he went to the outer what do you call it, to put up the communication. He flew on those planes where there was just 2 pilots and terrible weather. But I would just say, when somebody cares more about you than they really do about themselves. They just want you to be protected and cared for. And somebody that's just very sincere.
Yeah. That's great advice, that they speak kindly to you and kindly about you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really good. What else would you ask about a successful marriage or relationship, Ellie, do you think?
I think trust is like a big one.
Yes.
Like how do you trust each other when like things are hard during hard times?
Yeah.
And like stay committed to each other even through like all the ups and downs.
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I never had a problem trusting him.
Well, if you know someone is putting you first, you know what I mean? It's and you know that their primary concern is to protect and cover you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's pretty easy to trust them.
Yeah, I just trusted him. I never had any doubt. Isn't that interesting? But I never did. I knew that he had my best interest at heart. Even if we had an argument or a disagreement, we never carried it on, and we would it would be over with, and we all do that. We all have to have disagreements, arguments about different things, so.
What do you have any regrets looking back about something that you like wish you could change or you wish you did differently?
I do have regrets. I have regrets about several things. Let's see. One of them was my husband wanted to have everybody, he was with this group, what do they call? They went in to take care of teenagers or people that had mental problems, but they wanted to help them get into their own homes and be able to have a life of their own with their partners. And my husband wanted to have all of them to our house, not the people, but the people planning it. And I was just overwhelmed with the idea of thinking to do that, because it would be a whole bunch of people. And I said, gee, I'm not comfortable with that. And I've regretted it my whole life.
Really?
Somebody else did it, and I went to it, and I thought, and I was capable of doing it, and we had the house that would be perfect for it. So that was a big regret for me. That was a big regret, because that's another thing. He asked me. I said no, and he didn't push me. He said, you're not comfortable with it? And I said, no. I said, it's just more than I can handle. Yeah. And the thing is, they were going to bring all the food and everything.
Yeah.
So it was foolish, and I do regret that. Little things you regret but that was one of, when I think about it,
that's an interesting thing to stand out.
I say yes.
Yeah.
Why didn't I say yes,
Why didn't I say yes?
And
that's a question that I think, if you look back on where regrets are concerned, that's probably going to be that central question. Why didn't I say yes to that?
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? Regardless of whatever it is, you know what? Why didn't I should have said yes to that. You know what I mean? There was probably a blessing.
Exactly.
On the other side of that yes. There was some uncomfortable, something in the middle, or some, whatever it is. But why didn't I say yes?
And I really regret. That's one of my biggest regrets.
Really?
Crazy, but it is. Yeah.
Wow.
Then when he got ill, when my husband got Alzheimer's, and he was one of these very easygoing Alzheimer's patients, and I kept him at home as long as I could. And we were with Foundation House in Bothell at that time.
Okay.
And so I cared for him as long as I could. And I have a very supportive daughter, and she was a nurse. She's retired now, but she was at Children's Hospital for 24 years.
Wow.
But anyhow, she said to me, Mom, you can't do this anymore. Yeah. So I put him up the hill. At that time, up the hill was very good. But I went up every single day. I took him out every single day in the car. He loved to ride in the car. He always knew who I was.
Yeah.
I would take him in the car, and we would go get a burger. And he'd like to go down and sit by the ferry in Edmonds and watch the ferry boats. So we would do that. And But he was always, and then on the weekends, I would take him to my daughter's Saturday and Sunday. We would go over there for lunch and dinner, spend the whole afternoon. He would take a nap in the chair there, and he remained easygoing all the time. And when I would go visit him up at the nursing home, one of his caretakers said, you know what he does? Whatever I do for him, he puts his hand on my shoulder and says, thank you. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, well, that's his nature, So he was a blessing to me for 63 years.
I tell you what, one of my questions was going to ask you, what do you believe a successful life is? But you've given it to us.
Oh, thank you.
You've lived a successful life. I think that you would agree.
Yes.
And what's so interesting about it is that in our current culture and climate, if I were just to write out your life and hand it to someone, I don't know that they would. I don't know that they would say that. And that makes me sad because it is so successful. It's so rich. You've lived such a rich life. And I wish that for you, Ellie. I pray that for you. That when you get this age, you would have lived this fullness. This fullness.
But now, one thing I think you're going to do that I do regret is that I didn't get more of an education. I wish I had gotten a more education than I got. I really do, because it makes a big difference to you later on.
Yeah.
And I think your aim is to do that.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Really.
So I'm going to ask you about purpose. If I said to you, looking at your life, what do you think at this stage of your life, what was your purpose, do you think?
Through my life?
Yeah,
Okay. To be kind, caring, and giving whenever I can. To me, that's really important.
It is. Ellie, what do you fear? When you look out into the world and it's starting for you.
Yeah.
What do you fear?
I think for me, I mean, like right now I have like FOMO of like college, like fear of missing out on college, whatever acronym that falls under.
Yeah.
But I think
Fear of missing out on college, you mean like
not getting in.
Not getting
into college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Into one of the 27 that you...
Yes.
You think all 27 will be like, no?
Maybe.
Or do you think, is it a fear? What I'm trying to figure out, is it like I won't get into any, or because I was like this, if I get into Hampton, well, what about Howard? You know what I mean? What do they have going on over at Howard? Maybe I should have been over at Howard. You know what I mean? I had that kind of FOMO where it was like, yes, I can be over here, but then what's going on over there, right?
Yeah.
So I was trying to see if it's FOMO of not going, or is it FOMO of, am I picking the right one or something? There's a better one somewhere else.
I think it's a combination of both. I think not getting in and then not going to the college that God wants me to be at.
Okay.
I think is the other one.
Okay.
But I think another fear I have is like a fear of like making mistakes and like messing up. Because I'm not necessarily a perfectionist. Like I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but I think in some things I want to do things right. And when I make mistakes, I try not to harp on myself about it.
Yeah.
But I think like learning from you and like listening to you, I think being grateful and like being in the moment is like something that's really important. And then when you said like being kind to others and like showing generosity to other people, I think that's also really important because you can do that wherever you're at. It doesn't, you don't have to be at a specific school or a specific moment in your life. And I think that's really cool to hear that like if you just put others first and be kind. My mom always used to tell me that every day before I went to school. Yeah. Put others first and be kind. And so to hear that from you also is just like a really good reminder that God calls us to do that.
I think that what you got from her is exactly what you should have gotten from her. And so I usually have people write on a card, and I am going to have you write on a card. But the thing you said about gratitude and being kind and being in the moment is so real.
Yeah,
I'm so glad
Sometimes
that's what transferred.
Yeah.
To be in the moment and to be kind, because it doesn't matter what college you go to.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And the planning and is this going to be, or am I going to be? And really, even it sounds like God was with you wherever you went.
I really felt his presence, even as a young person.
Yeah.
And I needed him in my life when I was young. And I was just so glad.
Remind me, were your parents believers? Were your parents your parents were not believers?
My parents were not believers. They were good people.
Yeah.
But they weren't believers.
Okay.
And but I lived with my grandparents for quite a bit of time, too, which were wonderful because my mother had to work in the city because she and my father had separated. And so I went to a church across the street, which was a Methodist church. And this pastor at that church, he just saw that I think that I needed something. And he kind of took me under his wing. And he just made a lot of difference in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I already believed there was a Lord and everything, but he was wonderful. Yeah. So I think it's amazing how one person can reach out and help another person.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily be aware of it, just like we said, by being kind and helpful and a kind of aware of where that person is and where that person's coming from.
Yeah. And I think one of the testaments of your life is, let's say you pick a college and you're like, this wasn't the best fit, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like with the wet walls and the mold, God is still with you. It's not like he's like, good luck, Sean. Nobody told you even to the island. Like, you know what I mean? He's still there. Yeah. He is still holding your hand. Yeah. He is still walking with you through it. He doesn't leave. No. Because maybe I could have picked that one and not this one. Yeah. His promise to you is, lo, I am with you always. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I am with you. There's no caveat to that. Yeah. There's no asterisk to it. Like, unless you pick that college over that one, because I'm not going over there. Yeah. He doesn't say that. No. And every step of your life, Barbara, that you've mentioned, he's there. Yes. He just keeps showing up. Okay, now we're over here. Yeah. Okay, now we're over there. Okay, I want you, Ellie, to write down the thing about kindness. I want you to write that down. And I want you to date it on that card. And then, Barbara, I'm going to have you sign it because she's going to take that card with her to college and she's going to carry that card with her through life. Oh, okay. And she's going to remember that was a piece of wisdom that she received that was important to remember. To be kind and to reach out to people and to be grateful. That was so good. Be grateful right here in the moment.
Yes, that's true.
Right here, right now. Yeah. Be grateful. And
and that way, whatever comes our way, we know we have the Lord with us.
Yeah. Then Barbara's going to sign it. And as she's doing that, guys, I want to say thank you to Ellie and Barbara for joining us.
Thank you.
On From the Eyes of Wisdom. And we'll see you next time.